Retirement Cafe podcast, Money Fight Club. Making your money work harder with Anne Caborn. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Retirement Cafe podcast with me, your host, Justin King. If you're thinking about your retirement or already retired, you're in the right place. My aim is to help you plan for and live a successful and meaningful retirement. Retirement is far more than just a financial event. It's a significant life event, a major transition, which will bring with it new challenges and opportunities. So each episode contains tips, information, and inspiration to help you feel more informed and confident about your retirement. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Hello and welcome. I'm really pleased you could join me for the latest episode of the podcast. This week, I'm delighted to welcome Anne Caborn. Anne started her career as a journalist, writing for national newspapers and magazines. But she's an entrepreneur at heart. Her first business was selling daffodils to the neighbours in her street when she was only 8 to raise money for charity. In the 80s, she compiled the first British rich list for Money magazine, which fueled a fascination with the psychology of money. She then went on to found Make It and Mend It and write Money Fight Club, a book encouraging you to change the way you think about money. In our conversation, Anne shares her experience as a journalist, going freelance and being asked to write the first British rich list. She also shares what led her to writing Money Fight Club and the book's aims, all against the fascinating backdrop of her life story and the opportunities she's grasped along the way, including her most recent foray into teaching yoga. And has a really interesting life story to share, so I hope you enjoy listening and watching to our conversation. Welcome to the Retirement Cafe podcast, Anne Caborn.
And thank you very much indeed for having me.
Pleasures to chat to you today, Anne. I'm really looking forward to it. Now, I understand that you're on the south coast in Brighton, and are you retired? Are you thinking about retirement? Where are you at in life?
That's an interesting term, isn't retirement? I think I'm selectively retired. The reality is I am working less than I was a few years ago and have the great privilege and good luck to be able to pick and choose.
Fantastic. So tell me what you've done a lot of things in your life, and as you approach that kind of classic retirement age, that which of course could be any time from 50 to 75 or 95, who knows, depending on what all our ways of dealing with it. But tell me what you've done in your life that we should know about.
I can almost hear my you sort of like an early school teacher saying, Anne is bright, but she finds it very difficult to settle to things. And I think there is an element of that. I went through the usual business of wanting to be a ballerina and a vet at school, and finally settled on journalism. I was enormously enamoured of a campaigning journalist called John Pilger when I was growing up, and was in a house, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, where we read the Daily Mirror, and I was gobsmacked by these articles. So I thought I would follow in his footsteps. And so I trained as a journalist. Back in those days, you became an apprentice. You became apprenticed to a newspaper for anywhere between 5 and 7 years. Did that, moved to the north of England, because apparently you couldn't call yourself a proper journalist unless you'd worked up north.
Right.
Did that, and then came down to London. Did the usual business of shifting on national papers, and got made redundant. Not twice, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And on the 3rd time, I thought, enough already. So I went freelance and was very, very lucky to get offered a job with a magazine that was around then called Money Magazine, which was owned by an Australian company. And they'd done this thing in Oz where they'd found the 100 richest people in the country and written a big article about them. And would I be interested in doing the same? And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. First lesson, before you say yes to something, work out how much work's involved. So I did the first rich list, which appeared in Money Magazine back in the goodness knows when's, early 80s, I think. Although, to be fair, there was another journalist called Philip Beresford who'd been trying to get a rich list published in one of the posher Broad Streets and was being met with huge resistance on the basis that we're British, we don't like to talk about money. So although my list was published first, I always feel I have to credit him, because had it not been for the social niceties, he would have beaten me to it. And that kind of really helped support my freelance career, because it became a very easy way of establishing your credentials. Hello, my name's Anne Caborn. I researched the first rich list in this country, and that then gave me access to other opportunities. So over the years as a journalist, I've been lucky enough to work for a lot of the mainstream press. I mean, everything from the Mirror through to the Guardian, and a lot of magazines. So that was sort of phase one. And then, of course, this thing came along. What do they call it? The Wonder Web? The interweb? Funny old stuff. So suddenly you found that paper was redundant and people wanted you to write for digital. And I discovered, and isn't life just a discovery, really? I discovered that actually I am not, even though I screwed up this morning big time styling with my microphone for this interview, that tech did not daunt me. And I discovered all sorts of things, including an ability to write a little and read a little bit of code, which back in the day was really important, because those sort of out of the box sort of web development tools just didn't exist. So I went from being a journalist to being a digital content strategist, which is basically the same thing. They just slap a new label on it. And then I was lucky enough to do some work with a whole variety of big companies. I did some work with the BBC. I did some work with what was in those days called Granada Television, and at one stage looked after their all their soaps, so Emmerdale and Coronation Street and t'other one, which I can't remember now. But anyway, there certainly was 3 when I was around, and that was very interesting. And then started a company with a friend called CDA, Content Delivery and Analysis, and we worked for a huge load of people on that. And then we were holding a creative lunch one day. You remember those? We used to go out to lunch and get creative. And just with a group of people, very interesting people from various walks of life. And over about the second or the third bottle of Sauvignon Blanc, we came up with the idea, isn't it a pity that we chuck so much away? And out of that came a business called Make It and Mend It, which was a website and an email newsletter which helped people develop their skills, reupholstering sofas, retiling bathrooms, learning to knit. But we came at it from a point of view that not only is it very good for your pocket and for the planet, not to chuck stuff away, but it's also very good psychologically, And again, I suppose I would acknowledge particularly Professor Hilary Brafel, who I've had the joy of working with on some academic projects as well, about the importance of self-efficacy and the ability to do things for ourselves. And I suppose that's the other thing which I will own up to, which is success, and particularly if you're going to rapid cycle through things, is as much to do with other people's talents as it is to do with your own. You know, it's getting into a mix with people who are not only bright and creative, but have talents that work with yours and sit together. So Make It and Mend It ran for a number of years, and that got me very interested in the whole area of online advertising and search engine optimization, and how volume sales made a huge difference, working with the likes of Amazon and so on. So that was good. And after about 5 or 6 years, I and another one of the partners bowed out of that company. Again, for no other reason, teacher in the background, and just does have difficulty applying herself for long lengths of time. But I also knew a very good financial journalist called Lindsey Cook, who still writes for the FT. And we were talking about money, and she's absolutely brilliant at the practical stuff. And, obviously with you guys, the importance these days of getting to grips with your money. And I have always been very interested in the psychology of money. So why, do we, on the way home on a Friday evening, buy a new surfboard in the middle of winter? Because I've worked really hard all week and I'm feeling slightly miserable, so I'm going to have a surfboard, even though I'm not going to use it till next spring. So we started a business called Money Fight Club. We wrote a book, which has been and still continues to be very successful, and a website, and again, all those things of podcasting, things that obviously are like, swimming to you. But,
So what was the aim of Money Fight Club? What was your ambition there?
Well, again, the ambition was to give people access to practical information that would allow them to better self-serve. So there is very good information out there. And we all kind of know that we should be saving more, that our pensions are really important, that our homes are not a piggy bank. But at any one stage, we all do things or don't do things with our finances, which are just, wrong or silly or a little forgetful. Understanding why we make the financial decisions we do when we do does help you better serve yourself, and also teaching people how to better spot scams and say the no word. There are occasions when you are being sold something, and I'm not talking about financial products. It could be that you've accidentally drifted into a Porsche showroom on a rainy day, and the next thing you know, you're discussing, your finance options, and understanding that the guy who's selling to you is a very good salesman, and hats off to that. I have no problem with being sold to. But one of the reasons you're in danger of making a wrong financial decision is because you're being driven by something other than the financial decision. So you're being driven by the fact that it's Friday and your boss just shouted out to you, or you've just found out that you can't have the 2 weeks holiday in the summer that you wanted to, or, the kids are being a pain, and suddenly you want to treat yourself. And the guy who sells to you is very good at selling to you.
Absolutely. Now, of course, this type of emotional response to buying stuff. Of course, it isn't just the someone who could even think about going in the Porsche garage. It's people right across, isn't it? From the top
absolutely.
of the trees right the way down to the more economically challenged parts of our community. So how do we, obviously education is one point, but in essence we're dealing with emotion here, aren't we? We're doing it with the feelings are making us or guiding us towards making financial decisions. And I think a lot of us would love to believe that we're all absolutely perfectly rational with our money, and we work out exactly, economically what the best mortgage is, and whether we're the right house to buy, or the right relationship to get into, or whether we should buy that thing on a Friday night, or the eBay purchase at 2:00 in the morning after maybe 1 or 2 glasses of wine. But I've heard
that too. Yeah.
So how do people counteract, in essence, that they seem to be the human behavior with a hopefully an economic and rational behavior of which we maybe in the cold light of day would look at it and go, okay, well, I made a sensible decision yesterday.
No, I mean that's a good question, as they say. I think there are some rules of thumb that work for virtually everything, which is, first of all, buy, don't be sold to. So if you decide that you want to change car insurer, then sit down on an afternoon when you've got a little bit of time and do some research on car insurance policies. Don't go with the quote that handily drops into your inbox from a provider where you may have a couple of years ago put in the renewal date on your policy. It might turn out to be the best policy. It might not. So, don't get sold to ever. Buy stuff. Have a look at what's on offer. Don't be afraid to haggle. I know at one stage it became a little bit of a sort of like everybody haggles now. Well, it's your money. You've worked really hard for it. So even if you think you found 1 or 2 or 3 insurers, new homes, surfboards, don't be afraid to say, is this your best price? We can be a bit coy, and I think culturally we can be a bit coy. Whatever it is, whatever time of the day or night, either physically or mentally, walk around the block. There is something about purchase and not only what's happening mentally, but also the chemicals that are going on that give us that slight endorphin rush. There is something about walking away from a situation, putting a bit of distance. So if it's a shop, go and have a coffee, come back and have a second look. If it's that deal, first of all, the thing that says, well, unless I sign you up now, this deal goes, might be true 1 case in 1,000, but most of the time when you go back, the deal is still there. It might have even been improved on. So always walk around the block. And with the exception of the really important stuff. So the really important stuff is the roof over your head, the heat in your radiators. Yes, obviously things like pensions. There's a whole load of stuff that we get our knickers in a twist over that really we don't have to buy. And we certainly don't have to buy today or this week or possibly even this year. So practice not buying stuff.
So this is quite interesting, of course, because obviously you've been involved in the world of journalism, and I would argue that an awful lot of the journalism's purpose is to get us to buy the content, and the purpose of the content, of course, is to sell us stuff, not per se the content around. If you write a financial article in the FT about something, but let's say it was a digital content thing that someone then wants to. The reason they want to get us to read that content is that someone else wants to then advertise to us.
Sure.
And of course, this is the whole purpose of Facebook, was actually so that they could. The reason you give them your information is that then advertisers can sell you products. So every time you open up that Facebook, its purpose is there to sell you products, nothing more. And therefore, this is the big challenge, isn't it? That actually every time you turned on the Facebook or any other social media scenario, the gambit's against you straight away. So it's to hook you in so we can actually understand what you like and want and feel that you might wish to purchase. So this is a huge challenge, of course. So what you're turning on for your entertainment, I think when we watched classically Saturday night TV on ITV, we kind of knew in that break between the show that we were going to be sold to. We understood the rules of the game a little bit more. I think it was kind of quite clear. It's pretty aggressive now, isn't it? That actually you've sold the reason Google want you to go and search on their Google search engine is so they can sell you stuff.
Yeah.
Now you weren't expecting that. You were just trying to search for a washer or to fix your plumbing or whatever it was you were trying to do. But you didn't turn up to have an army of salespeople trying to flog your stuff. This is a whole heap of challenge. I mean, you knew what the Porsche guy was going to be doing in the sales room, didn't you? As soon as you walked in that he was going to try and sell you a Porsche. You knew the rules of the game.
He wasn't there for his health. Yes.
The rules of the game have now shifted, haven't they?
Yes, I think that's true. And, going back to the point about walking around the block, that walk round the block natural pause has disappeared. So, going back to your point about, during the commercial break, on would come the ads. The range of ads was tiny, possibly a soap powder that might make your dad's shirts a bit whiter, some toothpaste, some baked beans, none of which really are speaking to me right here, right now. But even then, the most that would happen is you would write down on your shopping list for the following Friday, toothpaste, and we'll try the one with the red stripe in it. Whereas now, you can be sitting there and something will come up. It won't even necessarily be an ad. It may be a product placement. And you think, oh, look at that throw, look at that vase. And the next thing, either using the same device or another device, you're into your Amazon account or something else, and that purchase is made. So that that natural cooling off period has gone. You're absolutely right. And that's why I think being aware of why we do what we do. I mean, these days as a sort of like a kind of retired person, one of the things that I do or trained to do was to teach yoga. So I teach yoga. Again, that teacher saying, you never settle to something else. But one of the things with that you're constantly saying to people is listen to your own body. Just because the person next to you is doing that pose or whatever doesn't mean that you should. Yes, you've got an ache in your shoulder. Yes, probably a good idea to do some yoga. But have you looked at the way you sit in your chair? That self-awareness holds true, I think, for a lot of things. So if we are watching telly or dabbling about on social media and something comes up, that listening to your own brain and that little sort of, oh, you could have one of those delivered tomorrow morning, and just, yeah, I could, but do I really want it? How's it going to feel in 3 days' time? Am I going to be looking at that and saying, I'm so pleased I bought it? Or am I going to be thinking, oh, I wish I hadn't wasted my money? And I think that constantly taking a moment and saying, why am I doing this? Or indeed, why am I not doing this? So why am I constantly fighting, pension contributions, or I get a nice bonus and instead of putting a slab of it against the mortgage, it's gone on 2 weeks in Barbados. Well, chance to be a fine thing in the current climate. And that's not to say we don't all deserve holidays, but, we sometimes self-sabotage extraordinarily because we just don't listen to ourselves enough, never mind other people.
No, absolutely. So, and what's as retirement stretches out in front of you, what does a most, if you make 90 and you're sitting on your favorite chair and you're just reflecting on the past 25 years, 30 years and going, you know what, that was just an amazing part of my life. What had to have happened?
What you mean between now and then, or between then and whenever? I mean, in terms of what I thought was the best bit, or? Well,
just what had to have happened. So you're 90 years old and you're sitting in your favourite chair and you're reflecting back on that period that you kind of traditionally called retirement.
Okay.
What fulfilled you? What was your passions? What were the things that you just go, wow, that was amazing?
I suppose it is that thing of, I only know that I'm resting or at leisure when I know that I've done something that means I deserve it. So for me, looking back, it was, gosh, I'm so lucky that I kept enough of my muscle power and my brain power to continue to be able to, let's not beat about the bush, generate some income, because that work part of the day is, for me, very much what makes the leisure part of the day so enjoyable. I think there is something about stay curious. So I have been lucky enough to align myself with interesting, curious people who have interesting skill sets, and I suspect that will continue to be an important part of it. So very few things can you carry the whole burden on your own. So who's standing next to you? How are they helping get me to my, can we change it from a comfy chair at 90 to a really incredible beach? I can,
The chair can be on the beach. It's no problem.
Okay. I'll go with that. I'll go with that. But yes, so it will be, I've been so lucky to have been with people where ideas have cropped up, which have turned into something which one might call the work part of the day. And I think the other thing, which I do think becomes difficult as you get older, which is that I've been willing to and brave enough to give it a go. Sometimes, and I can think of moments in the past, and the Rich List was one, where when they asked me to do it, and I had no terms of reference for it, there was a bit of me that said, oh, I can't do this. I'm scared. What if I make a complete and utter, mess of it? And, I didn't. I said yes, and it worked out. And if I look at my career, there's usually been a point where I've thought, oh, gosh, I'm going to be found out if I say yes to this. So that I've continued to be brave. So good people with good skill sets that match mine, enough marbles and muscle power to bring the whole thing together, and just a tiny little bit of bravery on the basis that, what's the worst that can happen? And I think finally, because I know this for a fact, which is I regret the things I didn't do more than the things I did do, even if they were a complete dog's breakfast.
Fantastic. Well, that's wise words, I think, for anybody in any stage of life. And I wish you a most wonderful future retirement, if that's what we want to call it. I think you're going to stay curious. You're going to have the people around you to empower you and to achieve everything you want to. And it sounds like you've got buckets full of courage. So I wish you all the success in the future. Thank you, Anne, for joining me on the podcast this morning. It's really been a pleasure to chatting to you. Thank you, Anne Caborn.
Thank you.
Thanks once again to Anne for sharing her story with me. To find out more about Money Fight Club, please check out the show notes on our website at theretirementcafe.co.uk, where you'll find all those useful links mentioned. As ever, if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else, share it with a friend, and if you can, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And be sure to subscribe either on our website or your preferred podcast player. I would like to quickly take some time to thank Healthy Aging by Design for writing a 5-star review saying, "Important stuff this. Healthy aging is so much more than simply having financial stability, but actually having a purpose in life." Well, I couldn't agree more, and I'm glad you're enjoying the podcast. Thank you so much for writing such a great review. Did you know all the podcasts are available to listen to or watch on my YouTube channel? And if you prefer to watch my conversations, simply head to YouTube and search for Justin King MFP, where you'll also find a whole series of other videos to help you plan for and live a successful retirement. So until next time, I'm Justin King, helping you feel more informed in your retirement.